So if you sign up on Eventbrite, you'll get an email from me, and then also with a recording link, and then also in the Work with Indies has like a event chat, I think, right? Yes, I guess events. I will drop the recording link in events once it's ready, which usually takes about 24 hours. So make sure you remember to go and check the events link if you want to get the recording to the class. But here we are. It's time for us to talk rapid prototyping and the iterative design process. Everybody here prototyped before, I assume? Probably we've all done some prototyping. Oh, hold on. Sorry, everybody. The Discord also does not like me to. Let's see here. A better way to do this? We can just share the screen. That's fine. All right, that should be now full screen for you. Are we seeing full screen? Good stuffs? Yes? All right, great. All right, welcome then to Rapid Prototyping and the Iterative Design Process. I cordially invite all of you to both learn with me today about more quickly testing your games and more thoroughly testing your game concepts, but also to actually do the exercise with us. You are welcome to drop questions in the chat. Looks like the questions are coming in. The chat's coming in slow enough that I can mostly follow it. But if you have questions as we go, please drop questions. Yes, I can also send out the deck. Good question, Sicer. So I'll drop the deck, the link to the recording, and any other important links in the events channel once the recording processes, which usually takes up to 24 hours. I invite you to engage with me in the chat, and then when we have games to test, so once you have come up with some great games, I will actually call one or two people up onto stage with me, and you can actually screen share and show us the games that you created, the prototypes that you created. We'll all play together and give each other some design feedback. So if you take this seriously and actually build a prototype right now with me, which I encourage you all to do, you're welcome to actually pop up on stage and get feedback from 50-odd people here from Work with Indies. All right, let's actually begin. I have ranted enough. So first of all, let's establish credibility. My name is Willem Delventhal, and I am a video game developer and designer. I've been working in the industry for just over 10 years. I got my start in the industry. Yes, so the actual talk and lecture is about an hour, Kappa, and we will maybe go over to like an hour and a half, but we're going to target about an hour. All right. So I'm a video game designer and developer. I started actually as an engineer. I've been making games forever. I used to hand in board games instead of book reports. Best life hack of the century. And then when I was 15, I accidentally sold a Flash game to addictinggames.com, if y'all remember the epic Flash gaming era. And that's when I realized that games could be an actual career. And I started pursuing it more freely. So I've been making games for quite a long time. These days, I've worked at a couple of bigger companies. I worked at Paradox for a little while, which is very cool. I worked at InView and Lumosity. These days, I'm working at a startup called Mod Collective or Modco Studio, where I run their studios department, which is their professional in-house team. Our main claim to fame is that we work on DLC for third-party studios. So I get to make cool DLC for cool games, which is pretty rad. And then in addition, I'm the headmaster at the Indie Game Academy. It is a live online gamified school for those who want to learn to make games. If you go to any game dev events and you see a purple wizard walking around with a yellow exclamation mark above his head, that's me. Stop by, say hi. I'll give you a quest, literally. All right. These are some of the games I've worked on. I tend to work in the simulation and ed tech space. The bottom left there is that game that I made when I was 15. High fidelity graphics. I've also dabbled in the indie space. So top left is my virtual AR board game, which was really cool. It's a dungeon crawler. And then the rest is professional stuff I've done. So the fires in which this talk was born. Where did the concept of paper prototyping enter my own life? And where is that based for all of you? So my very first job was at the brain training game company Lumosity. In the 4 years that I worked there, I shipped 12 titles for them. And Lumosity, if you're unaware, is all about trying to basically keep the player sharp. So yes, it's a game, but also it's helping you put cognitive load on your brain and therefore hopefully stave off death a little bit longer, right? It means that these are the highest, the stiffest scientific constraints and brainstorming constraints that I have ever dealt with as a developer, because they have to, if they're making claims about it helping your brain, we have to be very specific about what we actually deliver. So really heavily constraint-based, more so than any other brainstorming process I've ever since then had to do. And these games reached over 100 million users, heavily played by quite a lot of people. These are some of the games that I directly contributed to when I first got started there. I was actually making children's educational games, which was a ton of fun. And still to this day, the prototyping process with kids is like one of my favorite experiences, trying to get like a 2-year-old who can't read to understand how to play a game. Super fascinating design challenge. A lot of games shipped very quickly. During that process, this was, of course, pre-AI. This is like 12 years ago now. And then also, even if it wasn't pre-AI, investing any amount of time into testing a game takes time, right? And time is money. And therefore, the faster you can test a game, the better. And with these scientific constraints, it was very common for a game to get thrown out because it didn't fit something. It wasn't repeatable enough or whatever. And then, of course, you have regular design considerations, which is just like, is this game fun? Do people think it's cool? Do they understand it? So we did a ton of very rapid prototyping, and paper prototyping, as you can see in a couple of those images, was a very common part of our process. Let's actually literally build something on paper, put it in front of a person, get them to try it. Do they understand it? Do they think it's fun? And does it fulfill our scientific criteria? Was a regular part of how we did things. And let's see if, does this play? Do you have audio? Do you hear the seals? Sick. Yeah. High quality gameplay. So the reason I showed that one off is because that's what, the very first game that I, as a professional game developer, manned. This was my first title for Lumi Kids. The concept was working memory, which is a memory game where the information changes before you have to output the information again. So a seal would go into the snow and then shit would rotate and then you would dig up the seal. My fun fact for you here is that all of those seal sound effects were me, baby. All right. So here's the game plan for what we're going to do for the next hour. This is actually an adaptation, a truncation of a talk that I gave over at IGDC in India. First time I've ever been to India. It was so cool. We talked about paper prototyping. We had everybody actually make paper prototypes in the room together. This is an abridged version of that same talk coming to you all the way from India. This is the original version of the agenda. We're going to make it dramatically shorter by cutting out an entire round of brainstorming and workshopping. So first I'm going to lecture for a little bit. Then we're going to talk about sort of the 3 main versions of prototypes that I see get made. And then we're going to have you brainstorm, and then we're going to have you actually play test. And we're going to run some play tests together of the prototypes that all of you wonderful people make. My core thesis for this talk is simple. There's more than one way to prototype. What I see a lot of juniors make, I have now taught well over 10,000 people how to make games. And what I see a lot of junior developers do is they immediately start building the minute they have a cool idea. That's fine, and that can totally work. First thing to say is none of us know what the hell is going on. The game industry is really hard. So some people just start making games and it can be wonderful. But what I see work more often is a more scientific, thoughtful approach to testing game concepts until you find something absolutely wonderful. All of you probably know that this is very much a boom or bust industry. You either make crazy money, you either are Mecha Chameleon and you make $100 million for a game that you made in 2 months with 2 people. That's true if you didn't know that stat. Or you make basically nothing. That's how the game industry goes. So it isn't worth investing your time into a game that you aren't seeing a home run likelihood of success from. And therefore, it's very important to actually prototype and test your games. So I basically just explained this, but I'll talk about this a little bit more. The cost of a prototype is actually significant. If we're talking about Grand Theft Auto, which is, of course, one of the biggest AAAs out there, their prototype actually cost them $2.83 million. Oh, wait, I have that wrong. $50 million just to make this sort of prototype version of their game. That's wild. 1.5 years to get their game to the state where they can call prototype complete, design complete, and they can start building the real version of the game, right? That's insane. Then you look at something like Cuphead, a little bit closer to home, smaller budget. Even then, it's 2.5 years before they say that the prototype is complete, the game is complete, we know what the design is going to be, and then another 5.5 years after that to actually build it out. $5 million to make it. And then if we're getting even smaller, we're talking Celeste, we're truly going indie now with a little bit of funding. Even then, you could easily spend $150K. Headcount, the cost that we pay for a human to do work, is a lot higher than you would expect, a lot faster than you would expect. If you have a team of any more than 1 or 2 people, you're easily spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for just a couple of months of testing. They only did 6 months of testing with Celeste before they settled on the design. So prototyping is more expensive and longer of a process than you imagine because we are always shifting our designs. And we can shift our designs after the prototyping phase, of course, but in general, the most efficient way to test is to test quickly, upfront, until you're like, yup, this is magic, and then you build the rest of the game. So we prototype simply to cut down on the amount of time that it takes us to build out this game and prove the design. An amateur kind of just chooses the first game that they think is cool, and then they build it. And once again, that totally can work. We've seen that work. It's just unlikely to work regularly. A game dev champion chooses a game based on agreed upon objectives. Here are the things we're trying to do with this game, and an established vetting process of prototyping. Yes, JW Legacy, it is indeed being recorded. I will drop any of the pertinent links we talk about, including the recording, into the events chat once it finishes processing. So check that out later. All right, this is John Nelson Rose. He's one of my original mentors, and he has this great quote. He says, "We prototype test our ideas because no concept plays the way we think it will. Players never behave quite the way we expect." All of you, I guarantee, if you've worked on a game, have experienced that. Tell me in the chat, raise your hands virtually, if you have ever worked on a game and somebody played it in a way that you absolutely didn't believe they would play it. You were like, what are they doing? That happens a lot. I did not share the slides, but I will share it in the chat after this, in the events chat channel in Work with Ennies. Yeah, it is amazing how quickly your game design will not survive an actual human player. So the faster you get your game in front of real human players and get their experience playing the game, the better your game is going to be. Almost universally, the more cycles you run through your game with a real human, the more times you test and iterate on your game, almost universally, the better your game is. So the more times you prototype, the faster you prototype, the more rapidly you get human response, the better your game is. At the end of the day, the reason we want our game to be good is because risk mitigation. Making games is expensive. Even a very small budget indie game is going to cost you $500,000 easily. The minute you guys start messing around with budgets for your hypothetical indie studios, or if you have an indie studio, you already know this. It is amazing how quickly you will go through money to build a game. Games are one of the most complex digital goods that we create, period. And it's really easy to spend a lot of money very quickly. So it's not worth building a game unless we literally think it is phenomenal. Unless we're like, holy shit, this is the next Mecha Chameleon. We're going to make $100 million. That's if we're talking about money, by the way. It is totally kosher to just make a game because you want to have fun and make a cool game. We want to confirm a concept is promising before we invest in it. And literally 0% of games behave quite the way we expect once humans start playing them. A digital prototype can cost money, so sometimes we go simpler. We prototype to save time and therefore money. All right, so here is the fun part. Here's the meat. Here's the meat. There are 3 fundamental types of prototypes that I have used in my own career that I am bringing to all of you today. At the end of the day, a prototype in general is just a scientific test meant to reveal, prove, or disprove something about a game. So sometimes we make prototypes just for specific aspects of our game. We might make a prototype of a cool new boss that we want to try, or a cool new mechanic we might want to try. We do that all the time. Let me see if this double jump thing makes sense in this game. Let me see if, like, having this puzzle is going to be cool, or if it's just too confusing or whatever. We do specific tests of just specific parts of a game all the time, so don't forget that. I'm talking about this a little bit more like we're testing concepts throughout the span of this talk, but you can use prototypes to test any individual mechanic or element of your game as well. They're created to prove or disprove exact theories. I think this will be cool. I think a player will understand this. Shit, I was wrong. And they're often used for those smaller problems. So here are my 3 versions of prototype, my 3 sizes of prototype that I have used in my own career. The first is what we call a word prototype. This is probably the least commonly used because people don't really think of it as a valid test, but it is generally useful. A word prototype is a game that is spoken aloud or read via text with verbal or text responses in exchange. So the only input and the only output is words. A paper prototype or a codeless prototype is a prototype that is an approximation of gameplay. It somehow abstractly shows how a game will work, but doesn't actually literally let you play. It allows playtests without using a game engine. And then a digital prototype is a low-scope, actually playable game. You can actually get an engine, mess around in Unreal or whatever. So I like, what's everybody's Pokemon starters, eh? What are your Kanto starters? And why is it Squirtle and why are the rest of you wrong? Single-player MMO. I want to see that. So in escalating order, your 3 prototype types, word, paper, and digital, are significantly larger in scope. So a word prototype you can make up on the spot and just see what people think immediately. A paper prototype, you probably need a little time to prep. You could do it in a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days if you really want to make it awesome. And then a digital prototype is actual game development. It takes time to make a digital prototype, even in the AI age, to get it like right. Because once you get to a digital prototype, the like approximation, how close it is to the final game matters. Players are going to notice the differences. And so you start needing to invest a lot more once you build an actual digital one. I really like likening this to AI generating an image. When Midjourney first came out and we saw some of our first AI image generation, if you remember, it used to do that thing where it would show like a blurry version of the picture and it would get more and more and more clear until we had a clear version of the AI generated image. I like to think that that is sort of what these prototype types are like. When you do a word prototype, you can get some idea if something is cool. It's going to be very far away from the final version of the game, but you can generally go, oh, yeah, this is looking cool. I think this is the right direction to head. Paper prototypes, so approximate prototypes or abstracted prototypes, are closer, but we still are sort of approximating how the game works. Digital prototypes are like pretty close to the final game, but also we're going to be missing a bunch of features, final art, or whatever. And of course, the full game is the only time in which we finally know how good the full game is, which is part of why games are hard to make. So your level 1, your Squirtle and or I guess Charmander or Bulbasaur, that's fine, version of a prototype is your word prototype. This is auditory or text-based input and output. It is a testable game that is played only through voice or text input and output. The game designer describes a situation and gives prompts to players, occasionally using sketches, mock-ups, concept art, etc. So I might show you a cool boss, and I would just say, like, this is a valid prototype. Show you a cool boss. There's a picture of a cool boss that I mocked up. And I could be like, hey, where would you attack this guy? And that's actually a valid test. A person might say, oh, I'd go for his legs. That gives you information about how the player will eventually play the game, right? The player responds to these prompts. Here, I got to give you your cat tax. And now he gets kicked off the desk. That was Marius, everybody. The player responds to those prompts verbally. So this is quite literally like Dungeons and Dragons. Imagine D&D. That's what this is. Play D&D to test your games. There's actually been a lot of really cool game universes that came out of long-standing D&D campaigns, and that's very recent because we're literally testing how cool something is just by talking about it, right? So here's an example of one that I actually did. This was actually very early work I did at Modco. One of the first things they had me do was make gameplay expansions to Baldur's Gate 3. I did not do it in official partnership with Larian, which is sad, but I did get to make cool Baldur's Gate 3 quest lines. And this was me testing it with a friend of mine on Discord. I just basically said, hey, some shit happens. How do you respond to it? And that tells me how a player would respond to my final version of the game. This took me 3.5 seconds to prepare and test with Ace Burrito here, versus the final version of the game took us like 4 months to put together, right? So pros and cons of a word prototype. Word prototype, I find, are rarely used in the professional space. I think because people kind of look down on them. The pros, though, are that they are invented on the fly. They're great, therefore. Okay. Here's our second cat tax. This is the leveled up version of that cat we just saw. This is Fez. He's 12 years old. He's my bro forever, but I need my desk space right now. All right. So the pros are they're invented on the fly. They let you check gut instincts, and anybody can make them. That's an unexpected value. Your artist can make a word prototype. Your audio person can make a word prototype. That's something that is one of the ways that I see them get used. Let's say you have a small indie team, 5 folks, one person is your audio composer, and they're like, I have such a cool idea for how I think this should work. They can slap together a word prototype and play it with you and hopefully try to plead their case that way, right? The cons, though, are, of course, they're not representative. Me talking on Discord is not the same as me playing Baldur's Gate 3. Therefore, they are low validity. They can falsely prove things, and they give inaccurate data. But they do definitely have value. A word prototype is best used internally, meaning we don't test it with actual users, we test it with our team, as a quick way to kind of groupthink. Hey, I think this could be cool. What do you think? I had a cool idea for our next boss. Let me see what you would do in X situation. They're only really useful in that they have virtual zero setup. I can make them up on the fly. I can test quick, weird ideas. I can just see what they would think would be awesome. Otherwise, the results are not accurate enough to be worth it. I just saw James comment. Thank you for your second payment. I do have a third cat She is an introvert though, so we probably won't see her. But maybe we'll get you a third payment, James. All right, so level 2. We're leveling up. Now we're turtle up in here. Paper prototypes. This is my favorite. I almost wrote a whole book on this subject, and then AI came out, so I stopped writing it. You are the game engine. A paper prototype is a codeless prototype, where the game designer acts as the game engine themselves. So you can imagine actual pieces of paper on the ground, like that first picture I showed you from Lumosity. We're moving pieces of paper around, and usually the game developer is there testing it with their player, and therefore they're acting as the game engine interacting with the pieces. They can still give a really solid understanding of of a game's promise, of how good it could be. They're traditionally made and played with pieces of paper. This actually comes to us from the board game world. I have a cool example of that in just a second. But these days, we often run them in digital services. So Miro or Figma are two services that I use all the time for paper prototyping. For a while, I was working at at ImView, which is like a virtual avatar platform, and I was making them virtual escape rooms. And so it was really easy to like make a quick fake version of the escape room in Figma, and people could literally play it with me, and then I would adjust the designs before I handed it off to the engineers. So you can make them kind of anywhere. A codeless prototype, an approximate prototype. How do you play the game in an approximate way? It looks like the game, it kind of plays like the game, but it's probably missing components, with zero code and as fast as possible. So this is a video I've shown for a very long time. This is a great example. I muted actually though. This is a good example of a little puzzle platformer that students at a game design program built. And you can see they're actually literally moving pieces of paper around. They're playing the game in real time. And probably the developer is the one filming, or they're interacting with them somehow. So they're seeing what's happening. They're seeing these platforms move up and down. They're seeing what happens when players interact with buttons. And it is not at all the final game, but you will totally get player data out of an experience like this. You will know what things they interact with first. You'll know which directions they head. You'll know which questions they ask. What am I supposed to do here? And you'll know what goals they actually aim for and what they attempt to achieve. The other thing that this is kind of cool for is you'll know what they try to do that are outside of the bounds of your game. So a digital prototype has a fundamental limitation in that the player can only do what you programmed the ability for it to do. So I can't double jump in a game that double jumping was never programmed into, right? But in a paper prototype, the player could just decide to do that, and that might wind up giving you information about what is magical, fun, or special about the game. What could we add to the game? So your pros and cons of your paper prototype. These are most often used in board game design. That's where they originated, but they're still useful, I would say, for somewhere between 4 out of 5 and 9 out of 10 video game concepts for your very first tests. They're relatively quick to put together. You can easily put one of these together in an hour, maybe 3. And they can give a reasonable representation of the final game. The player is able to kind of wrap their head around how the game plays, and they're able to show you how they interact and use the game. Most team members can also make one. So once again, your audio person or your visual artist or your 3D modeler or your animator might have a cool idea for a game or a level or a new boss or a new mechanic. And they could put one of these together to try to show you how special that thing might be. And therefore, the two of you will make a better game because they're able to more competently talk with you about whether or not it's a cool idea. The cons are they're hard to use on real-time games. Us trying to do this for a first-person shooter might be hard. I am going to show you us doing that in a second. But definitely there are types of games where this works really easily for. Imagine all your turn-based games. We could totally play Baldur's Gate 3 Combat exactly like it plays in the video game on paper. We literally do. It's Dungeons & Dragons. It's sort of medium accuracy data, and it generally requires the tester to be present. The tester has to actually sort of run the game. The best times to use one of these is when you are trying to approximate high-level gameplay. So they're definitely useful really early stages. I'm trying to get an idea of what kind of game to make, what direction to head. Let me mess around with something on paper first before I kind of put my finger on what I think is special. You can't put a first-person shooter on paper, but you can totally see how a player would move through a first-person shooting map, right? We could lay out a map, actually draw out a map, and see how they move through the world and get a general idea of how they would move through an actual 3D first-person shooter map. This helps you sort of guide your arrow to target, making your eventual digital prototype much more accurate from the start instead of having to iterate a bunch on that digital one. So it's often used. The most common time I see this is as a precursor step to our digital prototype. We do this first, and therefore our digital prototype takes us less time. All right, so our level 3, our Blastoise now. Or I guess our Charizard or our Ivysaur. Oh shit, I'm making a mistake here. Ivysaur is the third evolution. Am I right about that? I'm so sorry if I've really pissed some people off. Venusaur. Oh god, somebody, I don't know, make fun of me in the chats. That was a big mistake. I've lost the subject material. All right, so a digital prototype is an actual playable test built in engine. A digital prototype is a hyper simplified but playable game or mechanic actually built in engine. So I'm building it in Unity, I'm building it in Unreal. I might build it in alternative engines, like maybe it's just a little HTML test. I'm going to show you one of those in a second. But it is actually built with code, it is functional, I can play it digitally. Much like others, it is a test meant to prove or disprove a specific hypothesis. I think this boss will be cool. I think this puzzle is understandable. But they're often very sparse or gray boxed, and they're always a balance. If you take away nothing else from this talk, just think about how much time you spend prototyping. Because what I see so often is that somebody thinks something is cool and they just start building it. Start with simpler versions. What can you build to prove how cool stuff is and therefore iterate and pivot before you have built anything big that you're going to have to throw out? Does everybody know the story of Duke Nukem Forever? Also, Color Optimist, does that mean you have a question? Drop your question in the chat for me. Does everybody know the story of Duke Nukem Forever? Because it's hilarious. So the first Duke Nukem game was built, actually, I don't know how long the first game took to build, but it was quite popular. Duke Nukem is still a household name, right? And then Duke Nukem Forever was the follow-up game, and it took 12 years, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Wasn't it even longer? Somebody find out how long Duke Nukem took. I think it was literally longer than 12 years. They changed their game engine 2 different times. They changed their entire art style, meaning having to redo all of the art 3 different times. And they finally got their game out after decades of trying to get this freaking game done, and then it totally flopped. The game was kind of mid, and like by then, like that long, your player base doesn't really exist anymore. They don't love the game like they used to. Long enough to finish it. I love that, BB. Yeah, so the problem with the problem that happens a lot, all of you have already experienced this probably, but you'll change your mind about what is special, and therefore work winds up having to get thrown out. And some of that's normal. Don't get too stressed about trying to do that perfectly. But prototyping early and prototyping like simply, low effort, but prototyping the essential stuff helps you not throw out work as often as possible. How do you recommend finding prototypers, prototype testers? So we will talk about playtesting a little bit later, but dot o'clock, that is actually tough. And it's surprising how difficult it is. For most of you here who are indie level, your prototype testers are going to be your friends and family. And they're going to be annoyed, and it's not going to be perfect data. But friends and family is your number one thing. You just say, hey, I need a little bit of your time. My biggest like recommendation here, simple tip for you, is just be actually there with them in person or at least on a video call. Because another like common stumbling block I see is people just send their build to somebody and go, hey, give me feedback. They will never do that, because they're busy too and they have their own lives. So instead be like, hey, can we play this together for an hour and then talk about it? And that is so much more likely to happen than just like blanketly sending it out to folks. So yeah, you're basically going like door to door almost, digital door to door to find your first testers. And then otherwise conferences, meetups, any place that will have game developers, your game developers love giving feedback. Okay. I'll answer this question, James, then I'm going to keep moving because I don't want to spend too much time here. I want to make sure we have some time to actually make cool prototypes. James asks, but please keep asking questions, everybody. James asks, if you have a more narrative-focused game, how do you approach prototyping it? Telltale, Dispatch, Life is Strange. Is that something more suited for a writer to explore? Yes. So any game that you're building, what you're actually testing is the magic, right? All of us game developers, you'll see, I feel like there's these sort of 2 spectrums on how game developers determine what games they make. There's like this really like sort of business-minded person who's like, they're really like figuring it out. They have a process, they test things, they put a bunch of different prototypes together, they like see which one performs best, they find their target market, and those people tend to be focused on finding the magic sort of incrementally. And then you have these weird indies who just make something that they think is cool, and sometimes that works, and then 9 out of 10 of them, their game doesn't go anywhere and we never hear about them, right? The reason I mentioned those 2 examples is because in either case, what they're looking for is the magic, is the sparkle. We call it different things, but at the end of the day, it's like, is this game special? Is it something that will wind up leaving an impact on a human who wants to spend their hours doing this instead of playing a different game or instead of, bathing? So the reason that I give you all that diatribe is because if you have a narrative focused game, the magic is gonna be the narrative. So why would you allow an engineer, let's say, to make a prototype of a narrative focused game? It should absolutely be in the hands of your writer. And there's writing a narrative focused game is actually great for testing in a simpler way. You can just test with a freaking Google Doc. Write yourself a couple. I'm literally actually going to show you an example. Write yourself a couple of pages of how the story plays out with a couple of baked in choices, and just test that with a human and see if they think it's cool. If you're getting a little bit more complicated, there's plenty of engines out there that you can build narrative games in very quickly. Ink is the one that's coming to mind, but it's not. There's the more popular one. Somebody tell me for choice-based narrative games. RenPy is another one. Twine. Twine is the one that I see the most commonly. So James, maybe start by testing just like in a Google Doc until you feel like you've got a cool premise going on. And then once you're like, okay, yeah, I have a sparkle, then you can start building in something like Twine. You don't need anybody else's help. RenPy and Ink are both good options, but Twine is the one I see the most often. All right, so this is an example of a mechanical digital prototype. We're testing one mechanic, and that is rowing a boat to the beat. So you'll notice this looks like shit. Once again, so many people who test their games, prototype their games, spend too long on those prototypes. And a really complicated, high-fidelity prototype has a place, but at some point it starts getting closer to a vertical slice, which is like an actual representative demo to show investors and stuff. And so remember, you're over here in prototyping. The point is to make big pivots right now and try out different crazy things. So your game should look, your prototype should look like shit. It should play like shit. It just needs to prove or disprove the hypothesis, right? So this is an example. Keep your prototype simple, people. Your pros and cons of a digital prototype. I'm already over time. I'm going to get us through here as quickly as possible. Your pros and cons of a digital prototype. This is by far the most commonly used. If somebody just says they're doing a prototype, they're talking about this. The pros of this are, of course, it's the most representative of the final game, and therefore you have the most accurate data. Also, because it's digital, you can share it with lots of folks. So when you have access to this, indies often don't. But once you have access to many players, you can drop a prototype and get hundreds of people to play it very quickly, versus with a Word or digital prototype, you typically have to be there one-on-one with each tester. Your cons, though, are, of course, that it takes dramatically the most time to actually put together. And it can encourage this process that I see where, like, people will prototype their game and then they'll feel invested because they have spent a lot of time building that prototype, and so they'll build the whole game off of that, like, shitty prototype code, and then they never escape the tech debt. I don't know if you guys have had that experience either. Testers tend to nitpick unimportant details as well. When it's a Word prototype or a digital or a paper prototype, the sky's the limit. The player is excited and, like, can see the possibility of what this will become. Versus a digital prototype, you have enclosed the creative box, and so you get less creative feedback from your players. So the best times to use this one are when you have a reasonably clear idea of the overall concept. You're like, yeah, this is what we're building. We're building this genre of game. We're building this thematic. It's going to be in this universe or whatever. And we're going to, like, this is going to be the target number of levels, etc. Like, once you have a pretty good idea, your design doc is relatively finalized. And usually we've used simpler prototypes to test that and prove that. Then we build a digital prototype. All video games should include a digital prototyping phase, definitely. If you have skipped the prototyping process, you are doing a disservice to yourself. Schedule yourself a specific time box here. Say we're going to spend a month prototyping. We're going to spend 3 months prototyping, because it is far too easy to wind up just in this land forever. Be flexible. If you're like, man, we still haven't found the magic, then keep prototyping, definitely. But don't get too bogged down. All right. So if I remember right, let me check my own deck really quickly here. Okay. I'm cognizant of time. I told y'all it would be an hour, so I don't want to spend too long. I think we should. I think it'll be fun to do a really quick little brainstorm. So let me talk about the brainstorming process, and then we'll get to making some prototypes. All right. So brainstorming process. I'm going to do this one pretty quickly. There's plenty of ways to brainstorm. Probably all of you already know how to brainstorm reasonably well. We've now helped over 40 student teams launch their games, their first games. Over 350 graduates of that core program, over 1,000 graduates of our programs in general, and we have a 100% release rate on our games. So this process of brainstorming is something that we have every single student go through, and so we have tested it a lot. Very simple 5-step process. Start by defining your constraints and objectives. What are you aiming for with this game? And what are the things that will stop you from achieving that? So number of people involved, how much money you have, how much time you have to build it, all of that good stuff. Once you have that, that's now your creative box to ideate inside, brainstorm inside. Once you've brainstormed inside a little bit, then you filter out, you kill a bunch of concepts that are just weak. You just know they're not going to be good. There's quick, easy ways to test some of those concepts, like just surveying and things like that. But you kill off the weak concepts as fast as possible. And then you prototype the ones that actually look compelling. You're like, okay, all right, a few of these are looking spicy. Let me try this out. And then you choose the very best and you build that friggin' game. So I don't think we'll talk about each of those sections. But yeah, let's do a word prototyping session. Who would like to play Obegron Trail, my example word prototype? I'm actually going to pull you up onto stage and we will have you play Obegron Trail. If you know the reference. Anybody want to play Obegron Trail with me? All right, Color. I'm bringing you up. We'll play probably one other example game. So if anybody is jonesing to play, you can play the next one with me. Hello, Color Optimist. How are you? Can you hear me? Oh no, we can't hear you. Here, mess with your mic while I get this opened.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to run us through this very quickly. I want to show y'all an example of actually playtesting a word prototype. So, Color Optimist, welcome. It's been a hot second since we've chatted. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. All right.
Heck yeah.
I'm ready for the Oberon Trail, though.
Yeah,
Oberon.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Oberon Trail.
All right, so Obegron Trail is a prototype that we put together to test whether or not we could make a compelling version of the classic game Oregon Trail, but set in space. It would still be something that an audience thinks it is interesting. So we're testing that. I'm actually going to stop screen sharing so I don't spoil what's coming up for everybody. I will show everybody the functional version of this doc after Color Optimist plays it. So we're going to play this via a word prototype, Color Optimist, which means I'm going to read to you a situation and your options, and you will tell me what you do in that situation. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. It'll take us maybe 5 to 10 minutes to play, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your thoughts on the experience. Is that all right?
All right, go for it.
All right. So welcome to Obegron Trail. Here we go. You begin, like many other settlers, Color Optimist, in a spaceport, about to board your newly purchased space shuttle. Your destination is Obegron XII, a brand new space colony, world-renowned for its space riches and easy space lifestyle. First, you must pick your class. Are you going to be a space doctor? You gain maximum money, but very little practical life experience. A space mechanic? You can fix just about anything, but you don't have much money saved. Or a space salesman? You're limited at fixing stuff, you got a little bit of money, but you're a great sweet talker.
I'm going to be a salesman.
All right. So everyone, Color Optimist is a space salesman. Great. You take off from the space station in your space shuttle on your way to Obegron XII. You're a little space nervous, but excited to get going. You bring with you a full crew and 3 main space assistants underneath you. What do you name these 3 people?
I'm going to name one Roger.
Okay.
Bob.
Great.
And Macy.
And Macy. Okay, awesome. All right, Roger, Bob, and Macy make up your space assistant crew. A few days of uneventful space flying pass you by when a scream wakes you up in the middle of the night. Space Assistant 1, Roger, has contracted space dysentery. James in the chat called it. It seems that you have 2 main options. 1, you can launch Roger into space. Can't risk the rest of the crew getting sick. Or 2, you can try to quarantine and treat Roger. What would you like to do?
Let me see. Well, I didn't pick the doctor. Mechanics probably. I wish I had a mechanic now to figure out something to the doctor would be more practical though.
Mm.
As a salesman, I don't know. I'd have to try to figure out what Bob and Mary would do about Roger. I don't know if they have enough knowledge to solve anything for Roger.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to flush him out into space. That's kind of crazy. I'd rather preserve him if I can and try to find some kind of solution.
Okay.
I don't really know if I have a solution. I'm gonna put him in quarantine.
All right, put him in quarantine. All right, so I want to call out. Thank you, Color Optimist, for playing this with me. I want to call out to everybody how much fantastic data we just got from Color Optimist. We have spent. I probably spent when I first made this. I've used this example so many times, by the way. I probably spent maybe an hour or two because I manually wrote the whole thing, building this word prototype. And here I am getting like an actual string of thought from a real human, a real player about how they would play this game in this situation. So we've learned a couple of things, like maybe there's other options that Color Optimist wants. He's clearly thinking about what kind of what his role is and how that matters, right? We're learning about how Color Optimist would play the final version of our game, even with this very simple test. All right, you said quarantine. You are sure you read something about space quarantining in a space textbook one time. You put Roger in their quarters and give them some space aspirin. Unfortunately, you didn't seal the quarters very well, and a few of Roger's friends visit them anyway. After a few weeks of awful space dysentery running rampant through your ship, 6 crew members, including Roger, are dead. However,
Oh gosh.
the worst of it seems to have passed, and you are free to move on. Congratulations.
I'm glad everyone else survived.
Yeah, let me just strike out Roger. They are space dead now. All right, great.
I salute you.
We all salute you, Roger. R.I.P. Roger. That can be our Roger is space dead. A few weeks more pass with minor problems and some technical glitches, but overall everything seems good. But then, just as you are about to start space breakfast, the warning lights begin to flash red. You're met with a dangerous space asteroid belt ahead. It seems like you have 2 main options. You can either, 1, fly through the asteroid belt. You might not make it, but it's the fastest way. Or 2, fly around. It will add a lot of time you aren't provisioned for, but it is safer.
Well, this goes back to what I was trying to do before. I'm trying to figure out who in my crew will be more capable to be able to give me some kind of solutions or solve for me.
Right?
If it's just up to me to make the choice without having any kind of knowledge.
Yep.
I don't know what my supplies. If I have low supplies, can I survive going out of my way? And I'll have, the supplies I need to make up for that time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I could just fly through it and just believe that the roll of the dice, I'll get a natural 20 and I'll just get through them meteors. I don't want to destroy my whole crew.
It's
Otherwise,
a space conundrum. Yeah.
Obergrund Trail will be lost there forever, and we'll all end up like Roger.
Yeah.
Dang, I can't risk everyone ending up like Roger. We gotta go out of the way.
All right, fly around. Fantastic. All right, you go around the space asteroid belt into uncharted space. It is long and arduous, and there are no planets to pick up food. Your people come close to starvation, but your smooth talking ways keep them level-headed, and they agree to ration what they have, just making it to the next space station in time. The rest of the journey is easy. No major problems, and you reach Obergron XII in record time. Congratulations,
Yes.
Color Optimist. You've made it through Obergron Trail.
Hey.
Hey, all right. So at this point, this is when I would do an exit interview with Color Optimist. We're sort of talking about playtesting here very quickly. Your typical playtest formula is you spend just as much time, barely any time, as much as you need, but no more, explaining the game and what you're hoping to get out of the test. Then you just let them play, and you shut up and watch them play, listen to them play, talk about them as they play, and then do a little exit interview, ask for clarifications on moments that happened. Color, if there was like a single mechanic that you would have in this game that you think is really important to have in this game for the final full version of the game, what might it be?
Providing context to the player.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I thought maybe the way that you were talking, you were like, yeah, I would really like to consult people. Maybe that's an important part of how the game should function. We have actual crew members that we can ask about what might happen in certain circumstances. We probably still don't have all the full information, but we can like talk with our crew and get their information on it.
Yeah, the choices that people make in order to get, different varying results.
Yeah,
It's a chain reaction to every decision that you make.
absolutely.
So having branching paths, this determines a lot of how a player will make a choice or make a decision.
Amazing. All right. So that's an example of a word prototype and a quick play test. Can we all get some celebratory claps, gifs, emojis for Color Optimist? Thank you, Color. And rest in peace, Space Roger. We'll miss you.
Oh, rest in peace, Roger.
Rest in peace. All right, awesome. So I think that's actually perfect. We've done one example of how a prototype actually runs and why it might be valuable. We've learned a bunch of information. Let me get my screen sharing again. We've learned about a bunch of information about this game, even in this very simple formula. You can imagine this game in its final form, right? It actually looks like Oregon Trail. We're playing through choices. We're clicking different options. We're seeing what happens. We're probably like managing food levels and stuff like that. You can totally imagine the final version of the game. But we've already learned some of what's magical about this game. All the space jokes landed very well. Everybody thought that was funny. The choice-based decision-making clearly works well. The potential death of crew members that we have named and we're attached to clearly works well. There's things we've learned about the potential of this game very quickly with very little actual information. Now, like I said, there's 1,000 ways to make any of these prototype types, but this is what I did for this particular example. All it is it has some information about the story itself, and then it has stuff for me to read, and then it tells me the options for me to read to the player, and then it tells me what happens given the data, given the variables that are in this game. So option 1, option 2, if you're a doctor, option 2, if you're not a doctor. And that's all I did. Very simple, very straightforward. Anybody can build one of these and then test it with a real human being. All right, let's get back to talk about prototyping. I think, yeah, for the sake of time, we're already at 7:20. Wow, how time flies. We're going to go ahead and move on. Let me think of it. Let's do a rapid prototype. A rapid brainstorm. We're just going to do it in the chat. You have no need to write it down for yourself unless you want to. Let's do a rapid brainstorm. If we were going to make a game that we could play with our players in 5 minutes or less, and that we could prototype via a word prototype, what would you build? Brainstorm with us in the chat. Write this out in the chat for me. What would you make? Roger died. What would you make? A puzzle game, says Sats. Absolutely. You can totally puzzle a word. You can totally make a word prototype of a puzzle, especially if it's a more abstract puzzle. You can describe the elements that are there and see what happens. What game would you make, though? Give me a specific idea. So tell me what puzzle game, Sats, you would actually build. Paper Airplane, Connor McMahon. Awesome. Yeah. So Connor says that we'd make a paper airplane game. We could test that versus word prototype. So like you could ask them how they might fold the airplane maybe or something like that. Nanograms. J-Train, tell me a little bit more. Give me like a sentence. Dungeon Crawler. Absolutely, Caliban. This lends itself so well to anything that is D&D or D&D adjacent. Dungeon Crawler, you can 1,000% test on paper. Maybe something where you have to boggle tiles and you have to use letters to create spells. Nice. I like that. Yeah. One of the other advantages of these simpler versions of prototypes is that your brain can fill in any of the blanks. So while you're testing with somebody, let's say it's a game about spell combinations. That's a very common mechanic people think is cool. Let's say the game is about spell combinations and they tell you, yeah, I try mixing the love spell and the fire spell. And that's not something you have thought of before. You can totally decide what it does in the moment. It doesn't have to be programmed yet. Roger's Revenge, Space Zombie Pirate Adventure. I'm buying that game, Danny. You make that game, you send it to me, I will feature it on my social media. Even if it's a prototype, 1,000%. All right, we're going to skip the brainstorm round 2 because this workshop was originally 3 hours long. So we're just going to keep going. And we're going to talk about building prototypes. So the general steps for you of making a good prototype come in 4 stages. Number 1, identify your core loop in 3 to 5 discrete steps. So somebody attempted the chat for me to write the core loop of Oregon Trail. What is the core loop of that game? Once you have the core loop of your game, I want you to identify 1 to 3 core systems and or mechanics that support that core loop. So how is the player engaging with my game? Your little mini lesson, by the way, people always talk about systems and mechanics. Your mechanics are individual discrete actions the player can take, usually one button in and some kind of output out. So I can jump, that's a mechanic. I can eat, that's a mechanic. I can plant crops, that's a mechanic. Your systems are collections of mechanics that serve the same purpose. So you'll have a farming system that allows a watering mechanic and a planting mechanic. So identify 1 to 3 core systems and or mechanics if your game is simple enough. Next, identify your core inputs and outputs. How does the player input information and output information? And then figure out how to translate these elements into a legitimate test of that game. So Dotto Clock has a simple core loop. Receive info, present choice, present consequences. Fantastic. That's the loop. I get information. I see a choice. I make a choice. That's the loop of Obergron Trail as it stands today. That's your core loop, the thing I do over and over again as a player. So, examples of Obergron Trail. Core loop. Ship runs into a problem. Player makes choice. Player receives outcome. Dotto Clock, you freaking nailed it. Core systems. Naming system for the crew. Job role system for deciding which role I am. Inputs and outputs. We have text input, multi-choice output, crew health output maybe, ship health output, food stores output. Even though the game was very simple, we did have an abstract concept of how much food we have, how healthy the ship was. The ship can break if you had made a different choice, color optimist, crew health output. All those things exist. With this information, if you write down just this info, you can get a pretty good idea of how to prototype a game concept. All right, we're going to skip the word prototyping section for the sake of time. I think y'all have a pretty good idea of how to actually do it. So, playtesting. Y'all saw very quickly how we playtest a prototype. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea of how we playtest as well. Playtesting is the actual act of testing those prototypes. We go through our own little feedback cycle or feedback loop when we're playtesting. We build a game, we test that game, we evaluate how the test went. Did they like it? Is there stuff we need to change? Is there cool ideas we got to add? We redesign the game. Okay, yes, let's add this cool idea. Let's remove that one. It was too confusing. And then we build that new version. We do that over and over and over again. Build, test, evaluate, redesign. Before you start your playtesting, obviously you got to make a prototype. And then this is one thing that I see people skip. Write down the specific questions you're trying to get answered. So for Obergron Trail, what are some questions maybe we were trying to answer? Does anybody have any ideas? I'm the game developer. I'm creating Obergron Trail. What are some things maybe we were trying to answer with that test? How should Roger die? Y'all are trolls up in here. That's great, though. What would be the consequences of my choice? Yeah, thought processes? Yeah. Yeah, so probably I was trying to test a couple of things. Are there enough choices? That's a good one. That's a real thing that we could be testing. Too many choices, says Psymaster. Yeah. Is it the appropriate number of choices? Perhaps it's too many, perhaps it's too few. I think if we're thinking about the fundamental goodness of a game, how good is this game? Does it have magic? We're probably also just testing, is the game fun? So some of the questions might be, do players care about a character that they named? That's a valid test. That's something that we just test. And now this whole Discord, this whole community right now, 40 people in this room, are talking about Roger like he's this grand character, and Roger didn't do shit except die. But because we named him, we care about him, right? So yes, we proved. We actually did check that box. Yes, players care more about their characters if they name them. And there's other things that we might have tested with that test. So yeah, did we have enough options to meaningfully make a choice? Something that Color Optimists seem to have a problem with. Do we have enough information for Color Optimists to feel comfortable making a choice? I don't know if any of you have played Reigns before, R-E-I-G-N-S, on mobile devices. But Reigns is a great example of a choice-based game where you have basically zero information. You're just swiping kind of gut check on how you run your kingdom, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens as a result. So are we sort of more Reigns-y, where we're giving the player literally no information and just letting them guess what's going to happen? Or are we giving them crew members that they can talk to ask about what they do? During the playtest itself, introduce the game with just enough information for the player to play. Another thing that I see people do all the time, especially juniors, they'll tell the whole friggin' story of the game. They'll talk about their inspiration. They'll be like, yeah, and it's early, so don't judge it too harshly. Don't do any of that. It's cool. Let it all go. Just say, hey, this is my narrative adventure game, and I would love you to play. Here it is. You don't need to say anything else. If there's anything that they literally need to know to play, tell them that, and then otherwise shut up and let them play. Ask them to think out loud as much as possible. Color Optimist, you did a great job of telling us what you were thinking as you played, but not all players are like that. A lot of players even will just quietly play, and you want to hear what's going on. We can't read their thoughts. So ask them to think out loud, and if you need to, remind them to think out loud. Avoid distracting them as much as possible, and take a lot of notes. As you're watching them play, scribble everything down, and prepare specific questions. Once a playtest finishes, ask for their unguided opinion first, ask open-ended feedback questions after that, and then ask specific questions last. So think about it as a funnel again. Biggest questions, most specific questions at the end. The main reason for that is to avoid bias. Humans are social, and we like when people like us, so we try to say nice things, especially when we're testing in person. So to avoid that, ask for unguided opinions first. We don't want to bias our players. Hey, what did you think? And then we get more specific over time. So at the end, we say, did you notice that the boss had a giant glowing red circle on his back that you didn't attack? But we don't ask that until the end. And then, of course, write down your action items and your takeaways. All right, we're going to skip these as well. We're now at about an hour. Yeah, we'll do like a 10-minute quick prototype bash after this, and then we will wrap up and say goodbye. So one of my favorite examples of somebody using paper prototyping is Michelle Menard, who was design director at Oxide Games. She worked on a number of games, but Aura History Untold is one of the more interesting examples of a 4X strategy game. So think a civilization game, right? Aura History Untold spent 2 years in the prototyping phase, and the entire first year, 12 months, was paper prototyping only. And the thing that was kind of wild about that is that they paper prototyped by making a board game. So they literally like put together how they think the game should work, the different resources, the different events that might happen in their civilization game, and then they built a very simple board game that they literally printed via Game Maker, and then they sent to some testers and got feedback that way. So for 12 months straight, they were testing their video game as a board game. They were getting approximate data about how, not Game Maker, Game Crafter? Somebody tell me. There's a service where you can order fully printed games. But for a year, they spent their time just playtesting a board game, and that got them closer to a final version of a game. Game Crafter? Is it Game Crafter? Awesome. Yeah, they also so the reason actually you mentioned it, Alasdair. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Let me know if I am. You mentioned their engine. Part of the reason that they spent 12 months playtesting as a board game is because they were building a brand new engine. So they couldn't build it an engine yet. And so in order to inform what the engine should be and to get data on how the game should play, they built this board game first. So great example of a specific use case where paper prototyping was actually the most appropriate choice. All right, so time to make our first prototype. We're going to talk about paper prototyping, but just a second. We've gotten one step closer to a great design for our role-playing game. It's time to approximate what gameplay might actually look like on paper. To help you understand what that looks like, let's check a couple examples. So, real-world example from Lumosity. I tried to make a game about deductive reasoning while I was at Lumosity, and it was really hard to put together. So I started with a concept sketch where a player would have information that is not yet revealed about how a color passes through a tree. So colors can get changed by different elements in the tree. So you might start with yellow, and then it hits a node where it turns blue, and then it winds up blue at the bottom. And so you had to predict what the colors would wind up at the end of the tree, at the output of the tree, right? And those little squares that you could flip over were each one color change. So when I hit this, I become blue. And so the player would try to predict what each of these squares actually is in order to make this output at the bottom, right? And that became a playable paper prototype. We tested that for a long time. We wound up deciding that that was kind of too complicated, and we never actually built this game. And instead, we wound up building a much simpler deductive reasoning game just about recognizing mathematical patterns. And this is another one of my games that I built for Lumosity, just called Fuse Clues. And the way that this works is it has a mathematical formula that a procedural generation algorithm that I wrote makes in the back end. The mathematical formula can be as simple as it adds 2 every time. So it would have been like 2, 4, 6, 8. But it can get as complicated as like it adds 2, divides by 3, and then subtracts 3. And so that would be much harder for a player to recognize, but they can still generally figure out the pattern that comes out of it. So another real-world example from Escape Academy, we had them on our podcast a while ago. This is a paper prototype of a pipe water game. We've played a lot of these before. Yes, it was called Fuse Clues. We were very pleased. That was a joke at first, and then we never abandoned the name. We thought it was so funny. So this is from Escape Academy, which is a great little indie game. And this is a test of a sort of classic pipe water flowing minigame. And they tested it just in Photoshop. and decided that it was fun and then built it for real in their game. So great example. Test it in Photoshop. It works. We can actually play the game just in Photoshop, right? So Mike is the co-founder and lead designer at Coin Crew, and he said, "There's something interesting about the freedom that a paper prototype has to improvise. We can change the game as we play, often leading us to designs we never would have imagined." This is one of my favorite little examples of how a paper prototype works. This is a dad playing Tetris with his daughter, and we can see that she is mostly playing Tetris, but we're missing a couple of key representative mechanics. We still have the randomization of the parts. We still have how a player might place the parts, but we of course don't have the actual scoring mechanism of the parts disappearing. So we can play this game, or at least approximately play it, and see how a player interacts, but we're missing a lot about how the game would function. But still, it probably took this dad a small handful of hours to build this thing versus months to build Tetris for real, unless you use AI. All right. So that was plenty of examples for you. To show you a couple of other examples from my own life, this is colored squares. Look at this high fidelity prototype. The whole concept of this game was you have colored squares, go figure, that can mix in color. So I can literally put two squares together and they will become, let's see, green plus blue becomes cyan, right? And you get scored depending on how close those colors are. And so this is something that I can actually play with a human and see what they think of it on the fly. And I made this paper prototype in like an hour, right? This is an example from my board game, which looks like I don't have a copy on hand to show you, but my indie company and I successfully funded a board game on Kickstarter that's basically like a really approachable dungeon crawler that uses an app to tell the story. And this is our actual combat prototype. This is the real prototype that we built to test how combat would work. Our original thesis was team-based Slay the Spire. Hilariously, Slay the Spire 2 now has team-based combat. So we predicted Slay the Spire 2 before they ever did. But we had the ability to play the game right here in just an ugly-ass Word document. And I wanted to show you that you can test most types of games. So here is a first-person shooter in paper prototype format. I can actually play the game. And if we had 3 hours, I would have somebody play this game with me. But you can see that the rooms actually reveal themselves over time, and the player can actually move through this room with their companion, who I voice act and like tell them how the companion reacts, so the player can find the key under the box and unlock the door after dealing with the enemy. So I can actually play this first-person shooter, and it took me less than an hour to put this together. All right, now back to the deck. So those were a couple of examples of prototypes we can put together. Any kind of puzzle game or turn-based game, super easy, super approachable to build in paper prototype format. Anything that is a little bit more sophisticated, complicated, but still turn-based or close to turn-based, very easy to approximate. And then anything real-time or Twitch-based is hard to test in paper prototype format, but you can like approximate it. You can still get close to how a game would work. So here's some examples of the game functioning here. You can actually play the game, and at the end you discover that the big bad enemy was hiding inside of a box the whole time. This is Rod Humble. I had the privilege of working with him at Paradox, and he says, a paper prototype requires you to attend to every interaction. It's a strength to have these things in your head and to be forced to act them out for your player. All right, now, I wanted to comment on AI. We are at 7:40, so I will wrap this up here pretty quick. AI in prototyping is absolutely here and is very powerful. Regardless of what you think about AI, it is here. It is a tool that's at your disposal, and some developers will use it basically no matter what. My way for you to think about AI in prototyping is that word, paper, and digital prototypes can all be made using AI. That's a possibility that you can explore. So think about your word prototypes as your text only. That's actually something you can do with AI very quickly and is quite fun. I do that pretty often, actually. I will give the AI rule sets about how the game should function, and then I will ask the AI to play it with me, and I'll be the player, like playing it with the AI. Paper prototypes, you can abstract it. I'm going to show you a great example of that in a second. And digital prototypes, you can, of course, get close to an actual buildable game. You're welcome to use AI in this session, by the way, if you want. So here's a great example. We were testing a marketplace. We have a marketplace we're building to help people buy DLC for their games, like literally buy somebody to build them a DLC. And in order to do so, we like had a mock-up of a DLC for RimWorld. We, of course, don't own RimWorld, and we're not going to build an actual DLC for RimWorld just to test if a marketplace works. So we needed like a game that people are building, but was really just like testing how our marketplace would work. And so I very quickly used Claude to build a version of RimWorld that plays a little bit more like a turn-based game. So this is RimWorld. This is an expansion for RimWorld called Utopia, which is like a future perfect version of RimWorld where you have robots that do everything for you. And it actually has little interactions where you decide how your colonists do stuff. They have little stats that get tracked and everything like that. This prototype took me, I think, maybe 2 hours to build, and that's including a couple of iterations. And that was the whole point of testing this marketplace. But this is a great example. This is actually, you could build this on paper. I would consider this somewhere around a paper prototype level. It is approximating gameplay. It's simulating gameplay, but it's not how the actual gameplay will work. If anybody has seen RimWorld, you know it's a live action game with actual characters who walk around and everything. But that's a great example of something you could slap together with AI very quickly. Before I leave the topic of AI, I want to soapbox for 1 second. We've talked a lot at the Indie Game Academy where we think generative AI fits in game dev, and I have a very simple distinction for you that I believe to be accurate. Number one, your appropriate use of AI when I think it's okay to use AI. I think it's okay to use it for problem solving. How the hell do I fix this bug? I think it's okay to use it for design feedback. How many gemstones should I have in my game? And I think it's okay to use it for code, which is interesting. I run into far more developers who are okay with it being used for code, and so I feel okay with it being used for code. Where I actually think AI should just not be used at all, even for prototyping, is creative assets. Like, yes, I can make sprite sheets using AI. Yes, I can make 3D models using AI. But also, there's 1,000 people out there who will do that same thing for you pretty quickly, and they want to work on your game. So go work with them. Don't use AI. Okay, that's my soapbox. I'm done now. All right. So I think we're at 7:44. So here's what I want to see happen. We're pretty much at the end of the talk. You now know how prototyping happens, how we build prototypes. You now know how we test prototypes. I would love to give everybody 6 minutes, super, super fast, in order to build a prototype. And in that 6 minutes, I want to see you slap something together. A word prototype, a digital prototype of some sort, like even just in Figma or Photoshop, or you could use AI to build something very quickly. And then I'll have one person show off that prototype, and then we will say goodbye. For Psych the Bear, asking about whether or not classes are discontinued, we will have a level 1 coming up in the future. I don't have a date for you on that. What we do have that I'm excited to talk about is our level 3 class that's starting in September, where you will join a team, build a game, and launch that game in under 2 months. The whole idea is to get everybody in that room a prototype game very quickly, learning from very smart people from the industry. We have dramatically reduced the price on that. I will drop the link to apply right away. If anybody wants to hear about level 3, when we finish this talk, I will tell everyone that we're done, and then I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about how level 3 works for anybody who wants to stick around after and hear about level 3. So we definitely have a level 3 coming up for you, Psych the Bear. A level 1 is probably in the works, but I don't have it scheduled yet, so I can't give you the link, obviously. All right. Yes, I will drop the links to all of the slides right now. What I would like, though, for 5 minutes, 5-minute timer, 5-minute timer. We're gonna try to everybody prototype a game very quickly. Maybe it is Roger Returns from Space if he's a space zombie. Maybe it is a game you've been thinking about for a long time. Maybe you just build one of the games that I showed here. Whatever your game is, maybe an escape room, a puzzle game, whatever your game is, I want you to attempt to make a playable prototype in just 5 minutes to prove the fact that you totally can. And then we'll call one person up to show their prototype, and then we will say goodbye. After that, I can talk about level 3 for anybody who wants to talk about level 3. All right, 5 minutes to make a game. That's all you've got. Here we go. Begin. I'll leave this timer up. I would love everybody frantically attempt to make a game right now. I would love everybody to make a game. I'd love to see as many as I can. Even if all you do is show off a screenshot or something, try to make a game real quick, everybody. Let's see what you got. Perfect idea. Yeah, tell us your game idea when you settle on it in the chat to inspire people. What are y'all going to prototype? 5 minutes. We'll take one person up. Yeah, Cymaster, I know what you mean about code. So we talked to a lot of devs, and the engineers are the ones who are the most cool with AI getting used. And I do think that AI is going to wind up being a part of game development. So I worry about telling people not to use AI at all, because I worry that they're going to fall behind as developers. That said, I think AI is pretty evil, and I think our corporate overlords are pretty evil. So I don't think there's a perfect answer. I think blanketly refusing AI is unfortunately, like, regardless of what else, I think it largely means you're gonna lose out to people who do use AI. But yeah, I think it's fair to say no generative AI. You can use it to help you code. I feel like that's a fair compromise. Most engineers, not all for sure, but most engineers I talk to about this, like people who code and use AI, and I think it's cool. Roger Space is a space zombie. You have just 3 more minutes to slap together a prototype. We're trying to prove to you that you can do it very fast. I will call up just one person to show off your prototype, talk about it for a second, and then we'll say goodbye. So we'll be done by about 8 here. Use the stones to destroy the stones. Yes. Anybody else loved how in Loki they just like had a drawer full of infinity stones? All these people died for infinity stones. And they just have a whole drawer of them. Awesome. Dodgeball game. Bertus slapped one together. Bertus, do you want to be the one who shows off your game in 2 minutes? How many lines of AI would you feel are then required to report that you used AI in your works? 1? Sorry, Sicer. If you used AI, you used AI. I mean, I don't know. No offense. No offense. Yeah. Use AI as a crutch. Yeah, I think that that's really true, Cymaster. Don't... Yes! Calates, that's awesome. Roger only shoots the player. That's so good. I freaking love that. Everybody, you've got 2 minutes left to build a functional, playable prototype. I'm going to call one person up on stage to show off their prototype. Maybe if we're feeling ambitious, we'll get one other person. We won't play them today. We'll just show them off. I'll comment on them, give you some feedback. And then we'll wrap up the event and say goodbye. I love that. Conversational combat. I'm intrigued, Sats D.S. What does that mean? I love funky mechanics. Now that I've been in games long enough, I know that funky mechanics are very hard to make commercially viable because players who get confused don't buy your game. But conversational combat, I'm definitely intrigued. I will have to find out. What else are people working on? I could tell you the game that I will build one day. It's my dream game. I'm going to build a game that I'm calling Under the Violet Moon. And it is a Chrono Trigger-like JRPG. I go on an adventure. I go on an RPG. And when I come back home, it's more like a Stardew Valley town management sim. The actual concept is to give the player the feeling of going off on an adventure while home keeps happening without you. So town keeps simulating even while you're gone fighting the bad guy, and you'll come home to all kinds of events and happenings when you return from your adventures. That's my big game I just can't wait to make, but it's going to take me like 4 years to build that, and that's really hard to find the time for. Prototype just made a screen sketch. That's good. Awesome. Gives you the idea. Is everybody making Roger the Space Zombie? All right, we have 10 seconds left. Finish up your 5-minute prototypes. And tell me in the chat if you would like to show off your prototype. If you want to show it off, do an emoji of a hand raising and say I have a prototype to show. All right, Sats, I'm gonna call you up on stage, and maybe we'll do a few. We will try to be done by 8. That sounds good. In 10 minutes. Where the heck is your face, Sats? Somewhere. There you are. Hello, game developer.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Would you like to show us your cool prototype?
Yes, I would. How do I do this? Share screen or?
Yeah, go ahead and share.
Is
your
that an
screen.
option?
We'll give you
Okay.
60 seconds. Pitch us the prototype. Tell us
Okay.
how it functions. Maybe show mechanics if they work. I'll give you some thoughts.
Okay, so we're going to start zoomed in.
Oh, nice.
So you get to flip over. Wish I had more cards than this, but you get to flip over 5 cards with traits on them randomly. So let's just flip over the top 5.
Okay.
And you get to pick 3 that you would like to make into your mask, into your character.
Oh, frick yeah. Well, clearly beauty.
Okay.
Next, I'm gonna go with sword. So we got the looks and the danger. You know.
Beauty, sword.
And then why don't we go with love? Let's keep it emotional.
Love. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So these are our 3 traits. Now you will be squaring off. Your opponent is a scheming advisor.
Dastardly.
You are the ruler of this place.
Okay.
So you have these 3 traits will fuse into love, beauty, and sword. Let's say beautiful assailant becomes your type now.
Okay.
And you have 10 turns to convince the scheming advisor that you want to of your whatever you're trying to convince them of.
Okay. Let's do one turn. Do I have a specific objective?
Yeah. Well, actually, technically, the creating the mask. Since you had love, beauty, and sword, that would get you forward 1. Oh, sorry, that's the turn counter. That will get you forward 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, things. And now you have learned that Scheming Advisor is 3 times weak to sword.
Okay.
And 1 times weak to beauty and love.
Okay, got it.
So then when you flip over your next cards on your next turn, turn counter goes up by 1.
Interesting.
You're trying to figure out what they're weak to.
Awesome. Okay. And the concept is like, can you describe what I would be visually seeing or experiencing as I played the game?
Yeah, I think of it as turn-based RPG almost.
Okay.
You would be crafting various masks or characters to play as while your conversation plays out. This is a very scrappy prototype of my narrative-heavy game.
Yeah.
So you would know going into a fight what your objective, what you're trying to convince the scheming advisor of. And you would have to create masks in a prior workshop minigame to try and swap between masks as you go.
Holy
to
crap.
see what tactics work best on which opponent.
Got it. Amazing. Absolute overachiever over here, Sats. I'm amazed. You did this all in 5 minutes?
No, I started working on it a little bit before.
Okay, sweet.
But not too much.
Got it. That's awesome. Well done. Yeah, I think this is a great example of like an abstracted game. This is not what we would see in the final game, but it's enough for me, the player, to play with you and you to get some perspective on how I experience the game. There's going to be stuff that I'm confused about. For instance, I'll just say this. You don't need to solve it. I'm just pointing it out for the sake of the lesson. The turn counter on the top and bottom, I'm a little confused about why they moved so much faster than I did, or if that's mine and if that's theirs.
Oh, yeah, no, I do have an answer to this, actually. The one on the bottom is their agreement meter, essentially. How much damage you've done, essentially.
Yeah. So that's a great example of like basically a bug. We have discovered something that the player didn't understand just here in paper prototype form. Awesome. All right, Sats, thank you for showing your game. This is above and beyond
Thank you so
what I was
much.
expecting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I am. Is there anybody who is just like dying to show theirs off, or shall we wrap up for today? BB, hey, check out my awesome sword. Isn't it so cool? Don't you think it must be correct and right since I have such an awesome sword? I was thinking if they're 3x weak to sword, can I just stab them? I don't know if it's that kind of game, but it sure seems that seems like a pretty effective argument, you know. So true, BB. All right, I'm loving seeing all these pictures. I think why don't we wrap up for today? We've already been here for an hour and a half. But I hope all of you wound up taking away a little bit about paper prototyping. I'm in love with this concept. Even in the age of AI, I still think that this concept has a place in game development. And you may have already noticed, I hope you've already noticed, that I don't really mean literally making stuff on paper. I do mean that, by the way. It's so much fun, and I encourage all of you to do it, especially if you have real humans to test your paper prototypes with. But what I really mean is this like abstracted version of a game. You can play test a game in an abstract form and still get valid, interesting feedback out of it. So here's my main summary of lessons for you, the most important slide perhaps. Number one, prototyping costs time, and therefore it costs money. So the faster we can prototype, the faster we can find the fun, as they always say, the better for all of us. Number two, the faster we can get to a strong design, the better. Oh, I already said that. Number three, start by defining your problem space before ideating concepts to fill it. What are my objectives for this game? And what are my constraints? How big is my team? How much time do I have? What kind of genres do we know very well? Next, filter out the weak concepts before prototyping the best ones. And then from those prototypes, you should be able to find one that is magical. If you don't, then you keep ideating and you keep prototyping. Word and paper prototypes are therefore valuable alternatives, often acting as an early step to better hone your digital prototype. So it isn't one of these over the others. It's the simpler prototypes before the digital prototypes. And in the end, there's just simply more than one way to actually prototype your game concepts. So let's do a little cool down questionnaire, and then we will say goodbye. I'd love to hear, what's your favorite takeaway from today? What's an actual lesson or takeaway you'll leave this little chat with? Roger is space dead. Dot. We can get you help if you're really feeling the pain. I'm gonna struggle to sleep tonight. I'm missing Roger, and I'm trying not to be mad at Color Optimist for getting them killed. But you know, I don't know. I'm not perfect. So Color, I value you, Color. You're always in our podcast. Thank you for being a part of our community. But man, I really wish you hadn't gotten Roger killed. All right. At what point do you give up on a game idea? Cymaster, such a good question. And there is, of course, no scientific answer to that. There was a slide that I saw in somebody else's presentation that I really loved. You will get better at noticing when people are full of shit. Really, it's about identifying if people are genuinely connecting with the concept, if humans, if players are genuinely connecting with the concept. So if people just say to you like, oh yeah, it's great, or like, oh I had fun, and they can't give specifics, that usually means that they are placating you, and they're doing it because they love you, and because they want you to be happy and feel good. But placation is actually not very valuable. Another really simple tip for you when you're playtesting is to just say, hey, you won't hurt my feelings. I want honest feedback as much as possible, and that will help avoid some of the placation. But that's really what you're looking for. If all you're really hearing from people is it's not very good, or at best they're just kind of like generically saying, yeah, it's good, then at some point it might be time to give up on it. I really think it's important to be able to kill your babies. Don't take that out of context. I think it's really important to be able to just move on. It's okay. It's okay to kill a concept. There's infinite games out there that you could build. Why don't we even just jump to questions, since that's what we're doing here. So we'll do Q&A for just a second, and answer some of those questions. All right. Opposite question. When do you think you should move out of the prototyping stage? Not over prototyping. Great question, James. I can tell you're paying attention. Yeah, also not really a science. I think this one is easier to answer, and that's really you should be defining in your overall time box, in your overall roadmap, how long you're going to spend prototyping. That is a tiny bit dangerous, because if I have a month to spend prototyping and I come up with a great idea on day one, I should be able to just move on. But then the opposite end of that, if I have a month and I spend a month and I don't find anything cool, then it kind of hurts to ask for more time. But really what you're looking for is that magic. You should truly, if you don't feel like you have a good sense for this yet, just make some games and don't worry about them being perfect games yet. Just make quick games, spend just a month or 2 or 4 building and releasing a game. Once you've done like 10 games, you'll start to have a sense for if something's got some magic. And you'll start to see things that make you go, oh, I think this does have magic. Things will gain traction more easily. Players will respond to it more easily. Players will give you specific feedback that's like good and bad. I actually find, for that matter, specific feedback about how a game is bad is actually a good sign, because it means they kind of like care enough that they're trying to make the game better. If somebody just says it's great, that's like the worst thing you can hear. That means that they just don't give a shit, which is fine. That's actually also valid feedback. But yeah, don't be a darling about your babies. Just kill them. It's fine. It's okay. We have so many games that we could each make, and if one of them's not special, hell yeah, you get to make the next one, right? I think the less you got ego and the less precious you are about the game, and the more you're willing to love any of your games and be like, wow, I didn't think this was as special as it is, but look at how much players love this. That's the sort of best perspective you can have going into it. All right. Yes, prototyping is an iteration. Many ideas, not just one. Test many things, kill most of them, eventually find one that's special. Any other questions we have from today's session? That Q emoji helped me find it, James. Thank you for that. Awesome. All right. So I will answer 1 or 2 more questions. My name is Willem Derbenthal. I will link you my LinkedIn. Follow me if you want. I make silly videos about being a game developer, and then also I do stuff. My main sort of objective in the world right now is trying to help more people launch indie game studios. I think it is the age of indie, and I would like to see as many people as possible launch indie game studios. Many of us will fail, and that's okay, because a couple of us will make Mecha Chameleon and become millionaires, and then we can slowly and surely take down our corporate overlords together. Cool. So you can follow me on LinkedIn if you'd like. In addition, I am the founder of the Indie Game Academy. We are a gamified online school for game developers. If you need portfolio projects or whatever the heck else, other people to collaborate with, join us in the Indie Game Academy Discord. And then finally, like I mentioned, we do have our most beloved class coming up, the Indie Game Academy Level 3 program. It is a 2-month-long course where you will join 6 live professors from the industry. They've got decades of experience between them. You will build a game from start to finish with a team and then launch that game by the end of the program. So the whole concept is you finish a damn game, we crack the whip, we make sure you get the game done. Out of 42 games that have come through our program, 40 of them have launched. We've only failed twice. So we're very good at making sure you get your damn game done. And you'll learn a lot of stuff along the way. So what I'm gonna do now is, if we have 1 or 2 last questions, I will answer them. Otherwise, I will spend about 10 minutes talking about what level 3 actually is. Here is the application, if you would like to fill it out. It is starting September 8th, and I will show an actual presentation and talk about it for just a second for like 10 or so minutes. So if you want to learn about level 3, hang out. Let's talk about level 3. Otherwise, thank you guys. Thank you for being here. I love teaching this class. I love teaching in general. I'm grateful for people giving me the time, listening to what I have to say, and hopefully learning something along the way. Yes, thank you, Sicer. I will be sending out the deck itself, as well as any important links, like the link to the recording once it finishes processing, into the events channel here in the Work with Indies Discord. I probably won't send it tonight because it's already pretty late for me. But tomorrow morning, keep an eye out for the event in the events channel, and I'll drop all the important links. All right? Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to talk about level 3 for a bit, only for those who feel like listening. Otherwise, feel free to take off if you don't want to make cool games with us. All right. Let's talk level 3. I'm going to take 1 meaningful sip of water, and then we'll begin. Oh, .o'clock. Thank you for bumping this. Ah, damn it. Wait, why is it small again? What the fuck? Why is Discord screen share so janky? All right, I'll just leave it like this. Whatever. .o'clock, can you apply for level 3 if you only know a little coding and specialize in other areas? Yes, great question. That is actually the whole point. Level 3 is all about collaboration. So we want an engineer, an artist, writer, for that matter, we were talking about writing, to all work together and release one game together. You do need, our simple requirement is that you have worked on a practice project before, you have finished a practice project before. That might be like a Flappy Bird, that might be a Unity tutorial. We want to see that you have made something. There's a place in the application for that. If you haven't made that, you can still apply. And in that space where it asks for the portfolio, just write that you haven't made something yet, and we will help you finish something before the class. We want people to join. We have changed the level 3 formula pretty dramatically. I'll talk about it here in just a second. But the intention is that we're more beginner friendly, actually. This is more for people who need those portfolio projects. For people who want to found studios, we have a different program for that. So here, I'll talk about level 3 a little bit, and then I'll answer all the questions together. Cool. How do you handle genre preferences when making teams? Super good question. We have a proprietary way where we sort the teams, and we put you together into a team. Genre preference is actually lower on the list. It's more important that you're capable of working with people and like finishing a game and getting it done than it is that you work on the perfect game in level 3. It's 2 months. Get a portfolio project done. Get it out there. This is not about you building a dream game. All right. Let's do a slide. Oh, wait. I just figured out that doesn't work for Discord reasons. Let's not do a slideshow. All right. Hello. Welcome to the Indie Game Academy. We turn students into game devs and game devs into indie studio founders. We do that with a 3-level system. Wow. IGA Level 3 is a weekend-long intro to the game industry. We are going to try to run one of these before the Level 3. We're just not sure if we can because Gamescom is coming up, and I and my whole team will be there. If you're going to Gamescom, let's hang out at Gamescom. So we're going to try to fit a Level 1 in beginning of September, but I can't guarantee it, so the link is still not live. There's definitely this Level 3 coming up. Level 2 is a technical foundation, so for people who are really uncomfortable, really feeling shaky about building games, getting an intro to how game engines work. And then Level 3 is our pride and joy. It's what people know us for. It's your first launched game with the team. So it's about working with the team, getting a game done, getting it live on a marketplace. The Indie Game Academy is where we started about 4 years ago now. It's about turning students into game devs. And then the Indie Game Foundry is our brand new, very, very baby publishing arm. This is about turning game devs into indie studio founders. I really want to see a game industry. If you remember, about 3% of our global money is made by indies. I really want to see that be 10%. And I think we can do that within our lifetimes easily. So we do these 3 things at our school. This is what we focus on. This is how our classes are different from other people. We like doing interdisciplinary teamwork. So we want that engineer and that artist to work together. We want you to launch games, period. Most important thing you can do for yourself, both for building your career and for launching your own studio. Just launch games. You get so much better at making games when you launch games. Go figure. And number 3, we try to have as much fun as we can. We gamify the hell out of the program. It's silly. It's a good time. And you still learn a lot. You already know who I am. I'm Willem Delventhal, the headmaster here. I'm both a designer in industry, as well as an entrepreneur and a game developer. I've been working on games for a very long time. This is from GDC in 2024. Once again, if you see a purple wizard at an event, it's probably me. Come say hi. These are some of the games I've worked on. I already talked about that. I've worked on a lot of simulation games, education games. Our mission at IGA is very straightforward. We want to bring about a new golden age in the game industry where all indie devs are able to financially support themselves by making games. And here in Level 3, the way that we help you do that is building a game and getting it out there. So IGA Level 3, Cohort 9, starts September 8th and goes until October 29th. It is Tuesday and Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., 2 hours per night, twice a week. Live online in a setting just like this, except that it'll actually be a room where we can communicate, not a stage. Happens September 8th, and we run 2 of these a year. In Level 3, it is a guided 2-month production cycle where students build an original game with a team under the guidance of 6 industry experts. They meet twice a week. They receive a full 2-hour lecture plus a workshop from 5 industry vets plus me. That's how you get your 6. You finish by launching an original game to itch.io, online web store marketplace, and you finish with a live pitch night to real publishers and industry figures. So you actually get the chance to pitch in front of real human beings who are actually publishers in industry. They give you thoughts and feedback on your game. You'll leave with everything you need to know to build your next big game and perhaps even launch your own studio. If you know us, you may recognize that some of this is already different from how we've run Level 3 in the past. Here's some of the fundamental changes. Number one, the professors are more focused on like sort of the foundational studio management. So this is the first time that you're actually going to learn to budget an indie studio. You're going to simulate budgeting your studio throughout the 2 months. You're going to learn to market your game a little bit more, and you're going to learn how to pitch publishers and how to fund your game. Those are all things we haven't really covered in the past. We're going to cover them here because we want to prep you for launching your own studio someday. Number two, we went from 4 months in the past to a 2-month program. We did that on purpose. Indie games that are succeeding, we're seeing a trend where the development time spent on each game is shorter and shorter and shorter. People make games more quickly, and they make this friend slop game genre is huge right now. They make games that are just delightful, wonderful experiences. And especially if this is more beginner friendly, which it is, that's a big part of what we tried to focus on with this redesign. We just want you to get a damn game done and out there. It's not about building a big master game. It's about getting a game done and learning your lessons fast. Solo devs are now welcome. It's the first time we've ever done that. If you're really like, I don't want to work in a team, you are welcome to solo dev on this program. Finally, you will finish with a pitch night, as before. This is more about getting the reps. There are scholarships to this program, by the way, and they're now totally random. So in the past, it's been about us reading every single application. We started to worry that introduced bias. So now if you want a scholarship, you apply for one. There's a random drawing. 25% of all students get a scholarship. All right, your first 10 games are going to suck, and so you might as well get them out of the way as fast as you can. Famous quote by Jesse Schell, who wrote The Art of Game Design, the original game design textbook. This program is exactly that. Get your first game done. Get it out. Work on it with real human beings, under smart folks, and get it out there. I'd love to hear in the chat, what's a game you've always wanted to make? Tell me in the chat. You don't need to tell me much. A sentence. What's a game that you've always wanted to make? I want to hear about it. While people are typing out their games, this is some games from a previous cohort. This is cohort 6 and the games that they finished. So you can see these are all relatively simple games. It's not about building the grand design. It's about building something quick and getting it done. If you want to build Grand Theft Auto My City, perhaps you make a game about cops chasing you. Something simple that is achievable, finishable in 2 months. And we will absolutely work with you to make sure that your designs are realistic for the shorter time period. All right, so this is how the actual program goes. This is essentially our curriculum. We move through a very traditional game dev life cycle. We build a game from start to finish. We spend one sprint, 2 weeks, prototyping our games. We talk about team building, game design, studio budgeting, and prototyping. Then we spend 2 weeks with our finished games, with our finished game concepts, building it to alpha, which means your game is now functional, but it's missing a lot of content. It is functionally complete, though. Then we spend 2 weeks in beta, polishing it up, getting it ready to launch, and then we spend 2 weeks in launch, getting ready and talking about the future of your game. So 2 months to get a game done and launched to itch.io, an actual marketplace. We, of course, gamify everything we do because we want it to be fun and silly and good. We want to have a good time while we make fun games. So every cohort, we run the House Cup. Students can earn points towards the House Cup by answering questions in class and doing other cool stuff. And so far, we've had 8 winners of the House Cup. House Cleric and House Ranger have won the cup 3 times each. House Rogue has won it twice. If you can do the math, you'll know that that means that House Warrior still hasn't won a single cup. So if you feel like an underdog and you want to come and win the first cup for House Warrior, come and join us for Cohort 9. This is Andy Lee. He is now a senior QA analyst at Zynga, one of the biggest mobile game companies in the world. And he says, I'm very excited that I recently got a test engineering job at a company making VR concert experiences. During my interviews, I was questioned more than once about my current endeavor with the Indie Game Academy and doing Unity programming in a group project. I believe it directly impacted me getting the job. So we're trying to build Level 3 in a way where it's a valuable portfolio piece to help you land work in games, but we know that landing work in games is bullshit hard right now. Back in the day when we first started this company, you had about an 8% chance of landing a job in games over 12 months of applying as a junior. So 1 in 10, generously. juniors would land their first job over a full year. That's already pretty tough. That same stat is now less than 1%. It's about 0.5%. So 1 in 200 will land their first job in games. That sucks. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm pretty sick of predatory capitalism. I believe that indie is absolutely the way to go. And it's hard. Most of us will not make enough money doing indie games, but at the very least, we will make games. It's within our control. And some of us will wind up Mecha Chameleon. And one of the things that's really cool about indie is when they succeed, they tend to lower the ladder for the rest of everybody else. One of my favorite examples of this is Aggro Crab. They built Another Crab's Treasure, and then they built Peak. And they are now making a lot of money. And they are already funding other indie games, putting out content about how to make great games, and in general supporting the indie game community and pulling other people up behind them. So that's what I want to see happen. I'm sick of trying to get people jobs and having them unfortunately fail. Oh, the cat hit the thing. I believe that indie is the way to go, and that all of you should launch your own studio and work with indies. All right, here are your professors, the most important bit from cohort 9. So you will spend 1 live class day with each of these smart people. They will give you a lesson and a workshop on your game. Number 1, we have Buddy Sola, very good friend of mine. He's the head of marketing at Akupara Games, with credits including Cryptmaster, Rainworld, and Australia. Buddy will talk with you about how to fund your game. How do you get money for your game and or a publisher for your game? Next, we have Frank Connolly. He's actually a mentor to me, and he represents something new to IGA Level 3. Frank is an ex-executive director at American Red Cross and the founder of Temple Spaces. He is just a much more traditional founder. And so Frank will be teaching us about budgeting. Wow. We're going to do a mock exercise where we actually budget out our production, and we see how close we are to the money that we spend to build our game. I want all of you to understand how much it costs to build a game. Next, we have Renee Gittins. Renee is the studio head at Stumbling Cat, IGDA Alumni Board Chair, and 2020 Forbes 30 Under 30 Games. She is a pretty damn smart person. I've learned a lot from Renee myself. She is going to be talking about game design fundamentals. How do you build a great game? How do you design a great game? Next, we have Jeremy House. He's actually a Level 3 graduate, and he now is a platform product leader at Riot Games, with contributions including Diablo Immortal and the League of Legends Riot Forge indie label. Jeremy will be teaching us about project management. So he's going to help you set up a Kanban board and get your games organized and done on time. One of the biggest stumbling blocks in game development is sticking to your deadlines. Next, we have June Rodriguez. June is a senior marketing manager at Squid Games and IGDA Austin marketing lead. June will be talking to us about social media marketing and getting our games some attention. And then finally, you have me! You can't get rid of me, people! I'm design director at Monica Studios, as I said, and the founder here at the Indie Game Academy. And the way that I primarily work is I fill in all those other gaps in between everybody else. I have an approximate knowledge in all areas of the game dev. I will of course not be able to teach you as well on funding as Buddy Sola could. So they'll teach you the really smart stuff, and I'll give you everything in between. So I'll be your primary guide throughout the 2 months. So here is your professor squad for Level 3 Cohort 9. Very excited to welcome them all to the table. All right, now we are also, keep your eye out for changes coming to the Indie Game Foundry. We did successfully launch our first games to the Foundry. We're very proud of those games, but we learned a lot being publishers for the first time, and we have a lot that we want to do differently. So we will have some announcements coming up pretty soon about how we're doing things differently in the future. So look forward to that. All right, so that means you will receive, total summary, 16 live class sessions, 2 hours apiece. If you like this, you'll get 16 of them. An indie team of 1 to 7 folks to work with, collaborate with, and launch a game with. Access to 6 veteran professors. 1 dedicated team prefect, so 1 person acts as the project manager on the team. A published game of your own design to itch.io. The chance to pitch your game to 4 to 5 actual game publishers. We finish every program with a pitch night. A community of wonderful magical wizards. Whoops. My computer is wigging out. And more. All kinds of other great stuff. So this is the best part by a lot of Level 3. This is something that I'm very proud of. In the past, this is the past. Don't freak out. This is what it used to be. The old pricing at IGA had Level 3 as high as $5,000. This increased over time And part of the reason that we hit that price level is because we kept building the program to be bigger. We added more and more and more to the program. And we felt like we kind of hit a breaking point where the program just had too much going on. It was too complicated, and it was trying to serve too many types of people all at once. So we have now dramatically simplified. That's why we're going from 4 months to 2 months, and we're making it more beginner friendly. It's about building a portfolio project. Everything else, less important. That portfolio project can take you many places, help you launch a studio, help you find a job, just make a great game that you have fun doing. That is valuable in and of itself, and everything else is something you can learn in another program. So I'm very happy to say that we have managed to dramatically slice the price of the class. So now level 3 is just 999 bucks. We've dropped it down to about $1,000. We feel like that is dramatically more accurate to the time period we're all in. So if you would like to join us for 2 months and get yourself a fully finished game with a team under the smart guidance of those 6 wonderful folks, I would love to have you apply to IGA Level 3. I'll drop that application link one more time. Applications are closing in about 3 weeks, but if you apply tonight, we will give you a 10% off code. You can input Work with Indies paper prototyping. In the very end of the application, there's a section where you can put a referral code. If you put in Work with Indies, you will cut down your price by 10%. You can also cut down your price by another 10% using a one-time payment. Psych the Bear, regional price, ? We don't have regional pricing, but we do have scholarships. So apply for that scholarship if that's a little bit too high. English language level requirement. Very good question. If you're not an English speaker, I would say you need to at least be able to understand me and communicate with other folks who mostly speak English. And that's the application there. The scholarship for the application, Color Optimist, is in the form. So towards the end of the form, it asks you if you want to apply for a scholarship, and it just is a random drawing now. It used to be that we would compare every applicant and try to pick the best people. We've decided that that feels a little bit too biased. So it's now just straight up 25% of folks get a scholarship, 25% of people who ask. That's it. Awesome. All right. So I am going to have some questions for level 3 now. I would love to see you all join. I'm very excited to run the program again. I actually haven't run it for about a year now because we were redesigning and deciding what's next for the Indie Game Academy and what's next for the Foundry, given all the craziness in the game industry. We think this now better reflects something that is immediately valuable to folks no matter what. And we think that this price level is dramatically more attainable for everybody out there. I kind of hate seeing online courses that cost like $12,000 and then they're just like recorded content or whatever. I think it's a little bit predatory. So this to me feels more in line with, hey, we're going to put you in a team with smart folks to guide you, and you're going to launch a game together in 2 months. It's a ton of fun. We have a great time together. I'd love to see you apply. I'm going to answer some questions for probably 10 minutes or so, and then we will truly say goodbye for the night. And I'm going to go change my shirt because it's hot as hell over here, and I am sweating so much, and it's disgusting, and I've been trying to hide it from all of you. All right. Question time. BB. If you've made a game as a team member but haven't worked on certain aspects of the development, should you get experience with the other aspects before level 3 if you haven't coded a full game before? Good question. So once again, the concept of level 3 is that it's about interdisciplinary collaboration. So as long as you feel reasonably competent, I'm talking like a 5 out of 10 or higher, you feel more than a beginner at one major area of game development, you're welcome to join the program. We will match you with folks that we believe you can competently build a team together and launch a game together. Once again, 42 times we've done this, 42 teams, and only twice have we failed. And I used to be able to say we've never failed, but unfortunately we have failed a few times. But for the most part, we can solve just about every problem that comes and faces your team. So yeah, a 5 out of 10 or higher-ish, and you'll be totally fine. If you're missing some area of game development, code, visual art, whatever, that's the whole point of the program. You have somebody who does that thing, and you therefore get practice collaborating with each other. Awesome. Programming experience outside of games, but in terms of games programming and design, I am somewhat a beginner. Would you recommend level 3 for someone like me? SciMaster, the main answer to that is if you have released something before. As long as you've made a little practice project of some sort, you can, I would say you're probably going to be competent enough to build these games. Once again, level 3 is meant to be more beginner friendly. I started to lose the plot in the previous designs of this program, forgetting that this is the Indie Game Academy. It's meant to teach you, meant to train you. It's not meant to be, the game that's going to wind up making you $10 million. That's for Foundry. We can talk about publishing altogether another day. I want you to apply and make great freaking games with us that make a ton of money. But for this is a practice project, so you can learn on the job. This is actually a real place you can learn on the job, unlike the rest of the industry. Victor, thank you for being so kind about the pricing. This is the cheapest it has literally ever been. The very first time I ran this program, when I had no idea what I was doing 4 years ago, it was over $2,000. It has never been this cheap. It is, as a result, we've had to streamline the class, but I think that's good. We're just going to get the freaking games done and get them out there. Everybody's going to have a portfolio project. Which coding language do you teach during the course? So it is not a technical boot camp. We're not going to teach you how to code. In level 2, you do learn some code. It is instead a collaborative boot camp. It's about how a game gets built together. How do we work together to launch a game? That's really what this program is all about. So which coding language do you teach during this course? Whichever one you, the engineer on your team, decides is best for your game. You act as the lead engineer on a project. You decide which language your game should use. If you're wrong, well, then you learn. All right. Do the creators own the creation? They do. Great question, Sicer. So you're going to sign a very simple contract that says every collaborator, every member, every student in the program owns an equal share of that game. IGA, Indie Game Academy, has no ownership of the game. It's just yours. Usually, students finish their projects and then they're done with it. They don't continue it. But now and then we definitely see people go and release a game for realsies. Oh, shoot. I'm forgetting the name of it. There's a game that launched relatively recently. Well, there is this one here. So now and then, people will take the game further. So here's an example of that. This is still a free game, but these students took the game and actually launched it to Steam. It's a great little game. Island of Lost Things. Wonderful sort of narrative adventure about accepting death. But very proud of this team for this game. But for the most part, people kind of just move on. Do you assist with getting it on Steam? Sicer, great question. So we decided in the past, people have been able to decide which marketplace they release their game to. So sometimes people would release to mobile, sometimes people would release to itch, sometimes people would release to Steam. What we've decided, once again, simplify. It's about getting a game done and out there. You just are going to release to itch during the program, which is a web store if you don't already know. I can definitely personally guide you, or some members of the school can definitely give you some direction to release to Steam, but the program is meant to get you releasing to itch, not Steam. And that's because it's a practice project. We get it done. We get it out. 2 months or bust, baby. That's pretty damn fast, if you don't already know. All right. Any other questions? I'm extremely proud of this game. I still show it off sometimes when people ask. I mean, here I am showing it off right now. Steam is after itch, says Color Optimist. Yeah, that's generally actually what people do. They'll release to itch, and then if it does well on itch, if they see traction on itch, people get excited, then they'll go to Steam. Yes, Victor, itch Steam millionaire. I'm still waiting on that third part myself. I'll tell you when I get there. Any other questions about level 3 from folks? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up. Do the students monetize on itch? So you are allowed to, and we do talk about it in class. We'll have a day where we talk about monetization. What I usually recommend is that all you do at most is accept donations. Donations are a little bit safer legally. If you don't already know, and we do talk about this in class, whenever you monetize, you're accepting liability for payments made. So if somebody buys your game and has a seizure, they could sue you. That's dangerous, obviously. So when you are releasing things to, or anything else could happen, right? When you charge for money, you have some legal risk. It's very unlikely to happen. I've never seen it happen on any of my students, but it can. So the ideal way to do it is to actually start a business, and then that business releases your games, and that way you are safe from liability because the business would take the hit if something crazy happened. So if you released a game without a business entity, which you definitely don't start a company in this program, no way we could do that in 2 months. It is a little bit risky, therefore, to just straight up like charge money. You can, and you generally are going to be safe. We're going to have a day where we talk about this, and I tell you the risks, and I tell you the pros and cons. But the nice sort of like safe way to maybe make a couple of bucks and just like feel cool that you made a couple of bucks is just donation based. So you can release to itch, and you can ask for donations and see if people pay you a couple bucks for it. Where do you send the prototyping slides? Yes. So once again, I will drop the slides, the recording of today's lecture, and any other important links into the events channel tomorrow morning. I'm going to go to sleep tonight, I think. I'm not going to release it tonight. But tomorrow morning, go and check the events channel, and I'll drop it all there. Any other questions? What is the schedule of classes? Yes. So that's on this. Oh, that's on this slide. It is in the very difficult to read purple text. It is Tuesday and Thursday nights from September 8th to October 29th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. EST. So exactly the same time slot that we just did here. Tuesday and Thursday nights, 6:30, 8:30. That is generally seems like the agreed upon best time for as many possible people. We do accept people from literally all over the world. So we'll have students from the Ukraine hanging out with people from India, hanging out with people from the United States. Sweet. I'm excited that you built your game, Colorlizer. All right. Any last questions? Yeah, rev share with like 3 or 4 people for $25 is a pain in the ass, Victor. Instead, you can like agree, you know, if we hit $100, everybody gets a copy of a different game or something like that. Awesome. All right. I think that's going to do it for me. I will drop the recordings and any links into the events chat tomorrow morning-ish. I have dropped for you the link to myself. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I will accept your follow. Just tell me you were in this class, and we can chat about cool games and stuff. You can come and join us in the Indie Game Academy Discord if you wish. And then, of course, we would love to see you apply for Level 3, Cohort 9. I'm very excited to run that. All right. I hope you learned many things about paper prototyping. Why don't you do this for me? I'm going to hide my own sweat. It's disgusting. I can't do heat, y'all. Raise your arms up into the sky and then bend it 90 degrees and then give yourself a nice pat on the back. Well done for getting through class, learning a couple of things. I hope you make some great games together. Give me one last round of celebratory gifs and or emojis to the chat. I want to see you being excited to make games. Indies are the future. Game development is wonderful. One of the most exciting art forms I've ever run into, and I can't wait to see what you all create with it. All right, y'all. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you again soon. Hope to see you in the Discord. Hope to see you on LinkedIn. Hope to see you in the class. Otherwise, thank you, James. Otherwise, I'll see you again soon, everybody. Bye now. Adios. Age of Indie. Indies together strong. All right. And the recording. Goodbye, recording.